Hello and welcome back to Buckle Up. My name's Jasper and this is quite possibly the most exciting electric car I've driven this year, the new Renault 5. Let's start with the styling, where you can see that this car has come out and it looks a lot like the concept car, and that's a really good thing. You've got a very smooth front bumper with this little section with strikes in it that matches up nicely with your bottom grille down here. This is a running theme throughout the exterior of the car, as is the shape of your daytime running light clusters. These are rally light inspired, and the top section of these is your indicator. That shape is embossed subtly into your headlamp clusters, which I really like, a very swoopy, accented design. At the top of these, you've got a little French flag, and you've also got the French cockerel in both of them. That's a little bit of an Easter egg you'll see throughout the exterior of the car. Large Renault badge front and centre, and then down here your sensor for your assisted driving systems, and then again these strikes in this darkened plastic section of the bumper down here. Over on the passenger side of the bonnet, you've got a little light up emblem, which is the 5. That will light up when the car is on or charging and show you the battery status. You do have to get one of the higher spec cars for that to illuminate though. And we move around to the side where we will see some black plastic wheel arch covers over these amazingly designed alloy wheels. They've got the Renault badge and a little 5 in the centre as an emblem, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. Above this wheel, you've got your charging flap. This will charge up to 100 kilowatts DC, which means you can get a 10 to 80% charge in about 30 minutes. Just behind this, you've got your 5 emblem in this graphic. This looks great, and you've got that same strike pattern along the bottom of the doors. Door mirrors are a gloss black plastic cover, and the side of the car is designed to look like a 3-door, but it is in fact a 5-door model, so it's very practical. I really like the tinted rear glass and this little black section up here, and as you move towards the back of the car, you move into a streaky rear light cluster with a little Renault Turbo inspired section of fake Venturi over at this side. Across the entire boot of the car, you've got a black plastic strip with again that running theme of striking through it, Renault script across the back here, and a 5 badge. Now this car is actually technically called the Renault R5, but nobody seems to have told the person designing the badges. But it doesn't matter because the rest of this looks brilliant. You've got some black plastic elements to your lower bumper, rear parking sensors, a reversing camera just down here, and then a blacked in rear screen with a little wiper and just kind of a tiny hint of a spoiler jutting out over that screen, but nothing particularly sporty. If we open this boot, which is manual, you are greeted with 326 litres of luggage space, which is actually very impressive. This is quite well packaged, this car. Now, the only thing to mention is there is a massive load lip, so it's very much a case of lifting something up, over and into the boot, but you don't really have a false floor. There is a boot floor, but you're straight into under boot floor storage. There is thankfully somewhere for your charging cable, and then also space for your tyre repair kit and compressor underneath here. You do also get vehicle to load, and your adapter for that sits neatly under this boot floor too. If you fold the rear seats down, which are a 60-40 split, you get over 1,100 litres of luggage space back here, which is really very impressive. Unfortunately, if you do fold those seats down, you don't get a completely flat load floor, but you can accept that little compromise. The boot doesn't really have any other features. You've got a little light over here and then a tiny plastic hook in the moulding on both sides, but that's basically it. Let's see what it's like inside. So, the back seats of the R5. There is not too much to speak about in here because when it comes to practicality, there is essentially nothing. I've got a pocket on the back of both of the front seats and nothing else. There is not even a door pocket or a cup holder in the door. There's nothing in the centre, there's no armrest. You do, however, have ISOFIX points on both of the outer seats, and they are behind flip-up plastic covers, which we always like to see. The materials on the seats are lovely. I absolutely love this fabric. Nice woven material on the bases of both of these outer seats, and then some lovely contrast white stitching on the centre. It's very comfortable. The foam's nice and supportive. However, because it's an EV, the floor in here is quite high, and and that means my legs have been lifted up a little. When it comes to headroom, I can actually feel the back of my head beginning to touch the ceiling. I am 173 centimetres tall, so I'm not the tallest of human beings, but there's enough space back here for a couple of adults as long as they aren't particularly tall. If you're 182 centimetres or 6 feet tall, you're probably going to have to slouch a little bit. But if you're behind a shorter driver, you should be all right for space. It's not the biggest of cars, but it is pretty well packaged. You've got a big boot, so your passenger space back here is a tad smaller than ideal. No vents, no charging ports, and the door cards are utilitarian, I guess is probably a fair way of describing them. You do, however, have electric windows back here, which is nice to see. Let's see what it's like up front. Okay, up front, it is definitely better equipped than the back because I've got space for things and loads of tech. Now, let's talk about practicality first. I've got cubbies galore in the center console, nice wireless Qi charging pad for my phone. This is a lovely grippy rubber material as well, so things won't slide around. I've got a pair of cup holders with a removable divider in the center down here. And then just behind that, I've got an armrest, which is nice and comfortable on the top. And if I lift that up, there's a reasonably deep but very small opening cubby in the centre there. The glove box is actually surprisingly reasonable for a French car that's been made into a right-hand drive car for the UK market. It's quite deep, goes back very far into the dashboard. The opening's not massive, but it's much better than cars like the ID range from VW. When we come to the door cards, they are a little bit disappointing, I'm afraid. There's not really space for a bottle of water down here unless you lay it down in the length of the space. As we begin to move up the dashboard, you'll see some absolutely lovely materials. You've got the same textured fabric on the dashboard that you have on the seats, and this has got some lovely contrast stitching. There's a brilliant little strike of lighting in this gloss black plastic section of the dashboard, and something I absolutely love is that pattern you see around your daytime running lights up front is round the air vents in here. Really nice. You've got a range of physical buttons as well, which is something of a rarity in 2025, but you've got proper climate control functions, including a temperature adjustment in this row of buttons here, but you also have a brilliant pair of digital screens for your infotainment system. Large, very letterbox style one for the driver's gauge cluster, which has Google Maps built into it, as does this Google system here. So you've got Google Assistant and Google Maps built in natively to the car. So that means your navigation is very handy, and if you select a destination, it'll tell you how much battery percentage you'll have when you get there. This system is pretty slick, it moves around very nicely, and it does respond kind of like a smartphone, which is really refreshing. There's a display for your climate controls along the bottom of the screen, but thankfully, because of these physical buttons, you don't have to touch the screen to adjust things in here. It's great. Driver's comfort is very good. These seats are incredibly supportive, very cushy, the foam is really nice, and they're very well bolstered, so you don't move around too much. The steering wheel is not particularly round, it's kind of a little bit quartic, and you do have a range of capacitive touch buttons on it, but you do have physical controls on either side for your cruise control speed adjustment and moving through the menu system, as well as a large button that says multi-sense on it, but is essentially for changing your drive modes. Behind the steering wheel, you've got your classic indicator and wiper stalks, you've got your very classic Renault volume and infotainment system, sound system mode adjustment over here, and then above all of that you've got this weirdly long stalk, which is actually for selecting whether you're in reverse, neutral, drive or braking mode. It's a bit odd, it's got a crystal element on the end of it with a Renault badge on it. That's probably my least favourite bit of the interior. It's just a bit weird, but it is nice and accessible. Your parking brake and auto hold buttons are down here, and every time you stop the car you do seem to have to apply that, but I'll check if it stops properly if you have auto hold on, and then you don't have to apply the parking brake. We'll see when we drive it. So speaking of, let's go and do that. The R5, how does it drive? It would be a shame if a car that looked this good on the outside did not stack up when it comes to the driving experience, but thankfully, I'm pleased to report it does. let's talk about powertrain. This is a front-wheel drive setup, single motor, and this motor produces at its peak 150 PS and 245 Newton meters of torque in this version. This has got the larger 52 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it will go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 8 seconds. That means it's a pretty good blend of performance and battery pack size, so on a full charge, you should see somewhere in the region of about 180 miles in the real world, which is a nice usable range. If you're doing city driving, this car reckons it will do over 240 miles on a full charge, and if you're driving on a motorway or at higher speeds, that will drop to somewhere in the region of 120 miles on a full charge. These are all real world figures as well. WLTP efficiency reckons this car will get over 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which in careful driving should be achievable. Power is delivered in a nice punchy sense. If you flex your right foot, you obviously have that instantaneous delivery of torque thanks to it being an EV, and I must say it feels pretty good. The other thing that surprised me is the steering. It's pretty communicative, and while there isn't loads of feedback, it's got a nice weight to it and you can tell where the wheels are pointing. It's relatively light, but it is nice and direct too. Couple that with good weights on the pedals, it's actually a nice vehicle to drive. Visibility all round is pretty decent. The door mirrors offer a great view along the sides of the car, but the rear windscreen is quite compressed, so especially if you've got rear passengers, you're going to struggle to see through that. The car is nice and easy to place on the road though, due to its pretty compact dimensions. If you change your drive mode into sport, the throttle does liven up a little bit and your ambient lighting within the cabin becomes red, because obviously sportiness. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that you don't have to go for the R5 with the 52 kilowatt hour battery. There is a model available with a 40 kilowatt pack, but you do lose a little bit of power and a chunk of range if you go for that one. The other thing to say about the driving experience is it's incredibly comfortable. So, the Renault R5, what do I think of it? Well, if you're interested in this car, go and test drive one, and quite frankly, go and buy one. It looks ace, the tech inside is brilliant, it's so practical, and it's got a really usable range, and the starting price just means that it's a very tempting purchase. So if you like how it looks, you will probably like the rest of the package here. That is everything for today's video. So firstly, thank you very much for watching. Secondly, please do go and support the channel in a few different ways. If you've enjoyed the video, like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the Buckle Up YouTube channel. Down in the video description, we've got all of our social medias as well as our spread shop, where you can buy some things with Buckle Up logos on them. Or if you'd like to support us directly here on YouTube, we do also offer channel memberships. I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.